Bruce Johnson, president and founder of BizScalers and the BizScalers Club. And today I want to talk to you about this important principle that the who always determines the what. The who always determines the what. And to help you understand that, I want to tell you a little story. Every year for the last 5 years, I've been invited to the Harbor Accelerator here in Charleston to talk to a group of entrepreneurs who are either starting and getting ready to launch, or they've already begun launching and they need to grow up fast. And so every time I'm always invited to talk about the subject of competitive advantage, which is one of my favorite subjects. I love talking about it, and after doing it 10 times, it's pretty well put in stone. They got great illustrations, great images, etc. So it's really kind of a lot of fun to do. And one of the things that I do before I show up each time is I go through and look at all the cohort companies, go to their websites and look at their messaging and what they're talking about in terms of their own competitive advantages, so that when I'm in the meeting and I'm talking about the subject of competitive advantages, I can then revert back to some of their stuff and say, now I noticed this or didn't notice this on certain pages. So it's a great session, it's a lot of fun, and afterwards, every time, a couple of the students who are entrepreneurs end up following up with me. This time was no different. So this week I ended up talking to a guy named Jake, and by the way, I did ask Jake if it's okay to tell the story. He said it was okay, so don't worry about that. So Jake calls up and he says, okay, when you were talking in that session, you mentioned there were a couple things you saw on my website that didn't necessarily connect, and I just wanted to follow up with those and see if you can help explain them a little bit more deeply. Now, if you've watched me for any length of time, you know that I love Socrates, and I think you should always ask questions first. So my first question back was, well, before I give you any advice, let me just ask you a couple questions. The most important one is, who actually is your ideal prospect? I mean, who's your ideal customer? Who's going to buy at the price points that you want? And so he gave me a couple answers. They weren't quite what I was looking for, so I asked some more questions, and eventually kind of narrowed down, and he got one of them right, and then there was one he wasn't thinking about. And I said, from my perspective, what I think for you, and his company's called Rheos, R-H-E-O-S, and they have floating sunglasses. And I said, I think probably the two best markets for you are going to be fishermen and boaters. Now, we live in Charleston, so we're near the ocean, and we tend to, again, get myopic, and we think everybody lives near the ocean. They don't. Most of the people in the U.S. don't. And I'm thinking, though, that there are an awful lot of lakes and rivers in the U.S., and there are a lot of people who are on boats or in fishermen who would really love having floating sunglasses. Instead of losing, $200 pair of sunglasses, you can invest in these sunglasses, and they float, so you're not going to lose them, so you don't lose your investment. Sounds pretty cool. But boaters and fishermen seem like the most obvious categories. And as I'm talking about that, he goes, as you're saying that, it's like so obvious. And I said, yeah, but remember, the who always determines the what. So now let's take a look at your website. We take a look at his website, and I said, at the top, I'm seeing somebody, going underwater. I'm seeing, people on the beach. I'm seeing people who are paddleboarding, which is really big here in Charleston. But around the country, I'm guessing it's a very small number of people who are paddleboarders versus people who, get on their speedboats and go water skiing or go fishing or get in a pontoon boat, etc. Or like to fish in for trout or something like that. So as I'm thinking about all that, I said, looking at your website, I have to go way down until I can finally find a picture of someone with a fishing rod. So if I'm a fisherman or I'm a boater and I'm looking at your site, I'm thinking this is not for me. Remember, the who always determines the what. And as I'm talking about that, he's going, that's just so obvious. Exactly. The who always determines the what. Now, Jake's situation is no different than it is for the vast majority of business owners and entrepreneurs, which is they don't think about the who enough, and then they don't allow the who to drive the what. Now, the idea of the concept of the who should determine the what, now that sounds easy, but I'm telling you, it's the application that is really difficult. Let me give you a couple examples. What I want you to do right now is I want you to either go to your website or I want you to go to your marketing materials, something you have close by, and then look at that. And as objectively as you can, now this is going to be hard, but as objectively as you can, say, if I was generic Joe looking at this, who would I think this was targeted to? And answer that question fairly. And then ask the question, is that who, the target market that we actually state is our who? And my guess is you're probably going to find the answer is going to be no. There's usually a huge disconnect between those two things. Is the who your ideal prospect, the person who's going to buy at the price point you want, as frequently as you want, with the margin and love what you're doing, or not? So first of all, just evaluate, is what we're now putting out in our messaging targeting the right who? The second implication is going to be in strategic planning. Right now, we're at that time of the year where you should be doing your strategic planning. I'm recording this in the fall. Now, in strategic planning, the who is the most important question to ask. Now, most people run past it. They just assume they already know their who. I'm going to tell you, you need to go back and ask the who question. Do we have the right who? Because who you will have as your ideal prospect may in fact not be who you're actually connecting with right now. Or it may be that the person you're going after right now doesn't have the money or the resources to actually pay the price points you want or buy frequently enough. And so you're probably going to have to make some changes on your who. In strategic planning, usually it's you have to niche down. We've got a number of people in BizScalers Club right now who've been niching down this year, and they're finding more traction. So if you're going after generic people, it's harder. The more you narrow down, the more you can connect with them and their specific problems, the more potent your solution is for them. So in strategic planning, you're going to need to ask the question, is the who that we're currently going after the right who for the next 12 to 24 months? Some of you are going to add an extra who, some of you are going to get rid of the who and put in a new who. It doesn't make any difference. In strategic planning, you need to ask the question, do we have the right who? Once you answer the right who question, then everything that comes after that in your business model might change, because the who might mean that you have to come up with a different product or service that you're offering. It might mean that you're going to have to change your competitive advantages because what connects to this who might be different than the previous who. Your marketing channels might need to change, your selling strategy might change, your delivery process might change, your pricing might change. Remember, the who determines everything, so answering the who question is pretty important on a strategic level. Third implication of this, the application of this principle of the who determines the what, would be, is the who uses our product the same person who buys our product? Give you an example of this. Let's say that you're in B2B business and you sell some machine. Or how about this one? Let's say you have a software solution for AP processing. How about that? Now, it's really easy to think that all your messaging should focus in on the accounting department and the people who are processing AP. But in reality, that's probably not the person who actually buys that solution. It's probably maybe the CFO, it could be the CTO, it could be the COO, etc. And what this person here cares about, are probably very different things. This might be about the ease of the product, but here might be the ROI. You know, how much time is this going to save me? How much in terms of revenue will it and cost save me? So that kind of person is going to ask a very different set of questions than this person here. So you might find out that you've been marketing to the end user, but in reality, you need to start marketing to the actual buyer. That's the third implication. The fourth one would be this. Do we have multiple who's that we ought to be marketing to? So if you have just one website, but you have multiple who's, if you have everyone coming in and the message doesn't connect with that person who's going to buy, you got a problem. In the case of Jake, for example, when we were talking about this, I said, now Jake, you've got this group here, which are the fishermen, let's just say, and the boaters, but there's another group of people that you need to be thinking about, right? That would be the retailers, or more likely the buyers of a chain of stores, or it might be a distributor. And that group of people isn't as concerned about floatability, they're more concerned about profitability. So you're going to have to figure out, how am I going to connect the message to that different group of people? Because remember, the who always determines the what. And the last implication of this for today, just one last thought, is are you projecting what you think the who wants, or are you actually talking to the who to find out what they want? And the vast majority of business owners, entrepreneurs, CEOs, founders that I know, they almost all project, and they assume that whatever they think is important is what their prospects or customers think is important, and that is rarely true. So the more that you can get out of projecting and you can actually talk to customers and find out what they want, the more you can try to get out of your own head and start thinking like they think, which means you have to have lots of conversations with them, the better your messaging will be, because you're not projecting onto them what you think is important, you're actually talking to them. If the who determines the what, and it absolutely does, then those 5 implications are things you need to start thinking about right now, because the more that you connect with people, real people, with what they care about, the more people are going to want your product, your service, your solution. They're going to begin to buy it more frequently at higher price points. So if you want to build a more scalable and profitable company, you need to own the who determines the what. Then make sure everybody on your team owns the who determines the what. And then look at everything you're doing from strategy to messaging and make sure that your what is always in line with your who. Now, if you found this helpful, I would encourage you to pass this along to some other business owners and entrepreneurs you know. If you're watching this by video, make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel. by hitting the subscribe button. If you're listening to this by podcast, whether you're on Google Play or you're on iTunes, whatever it is, make sure you subscribe there, because my commitment to you is each and every week I'm going to bring you actionable content that you can begin using that week to help you build a more scalable and profitable business. So until next week, to your accelerated success, Bruce out.